We do have some breaking news we want to get to, internationally speaking, right now, happening as we speak, live, raw, and unfiltered. The owner of the Wagner private military contractor, Yevgeny Prigozhin, escalating his direct challenge to the Kremlin today, calling for an armed rebellion aimed at ousting Russia's defense minister. The security services reacting immediately by opening a criminal investigation into one Yevgeny Prigozhin. This has huge implications, not only for the leadership structure there in Moscow, but also for the battlefield there on the war in Ukraine. We want to talk about this right now with national security expert Hal Kempfer on this Friday. Hal, thanks for being with us. This has been percolating on social media really for the last hour. We've been seeing incredible images on the streets of Moscow. Let's walk our viewers back, though. How did we get here? How did this all unfold? I know it's breaking. It's very, very fluid. What's Yevgeny Prigozhin up to right now?
Well, Prigozhin basically has been put into a difficult situation. Andrew, what's happened was, as you recall, a couple weeks ago, the Russian Ministry of Defense, with Putin's apparent blessing, if you will, had put out that all of the separate militias, these mercenary organizations, these private military companies, like the Wagner Group, but also like the Chechen militia that was fighting over in Ukraine for Russia, that they would be incorporated under the Ministry of Defense, essentially wiping out Prigozhin's business model, if you will, as a mercenary company operating in Ukraine. It wasn't clear if it was going to operate, if it would affect his Africa operations or not, but it was definitely going to be a huge blow to him. Generally speaking, most did not think that Prigozhin was going to go down quietly with this, and he obviously hasn't. Now, today, he's been making some fairly strident rhetorical statements about this, but today he stood in front of what he said was a Wagner position where he says the Russian military had basically shelled his position and killed 2,000 Wagner troops.
He's claiming that happened purposefully.
That's pretty profound to say that. Now, it wasn't clear if that actually happened. He was standing in front of an area that looked like it had been hit with shelling, and there was somebody in that frame that looked like might have been a Wagner troop who'd been killed. It wasn't quite clear, but he was making that claim, and then he went forward and made the claim that everyone's talking about, which is basically castigating the Ministry of Defense and calling for basically an armed insurrection against the Ministry of Defense. Interesting, talking about an armed insurrection against the defense minister, but obviously a kind of an indirect slight towards Putin himself, because it's Putin's defense minister and Putin's Ministry of Defense. Yeah. And that's where he's been making this distinction. And one thing he said that that the Russian people and that Putin himself have been lied to by the Ministry of Defense.
Okay.
Trying to put kind of a little bit of light between that. But obviously the result has been they got a warrant out for his arrest. There's reports that FSB, the security service within Russia, has gone in and physically taken his headquarters building in St. Petersburg. And there's all sorts of stuff on Twitter, and I can't be sure if it's contemporary or not. You know, it's Twitter. There's stuff going out there showing armored vehicles running all over Moscow and other cities, which is being said that there is a something military going on. Reports that that's exactly what it's showing, but it's also showing armored vehicles. There you see in the front, there's an armored vehicle in front of the truck. But saying that they have sent armored vehicles to the Duma, and there's some report that a major general has taken one of the power centers, and they weren't sure which side that major general was on, which is kind of an interesting speculation online. And this is all happening right now.
Okay, Hal, though, who is it? This is from Russia's side right now, fortifying key buildings, streets there in Moscow. We're seeing right now some reports. Checkpoints have been set up. Have you seen that?
Yes, checkpoints have been set up.
What would that indicate?
By the way, those wheeled vehicles you see, those are what's called BTRs, various different types. Those are probably BTR 80s that are being used. If you're operating in an urban area, wheeled vehicles are better than tracked vehicles. That's just if you ever happen to plan or to conduct warfare in urban areas, that's something to consider. But but that's something that might be indicative of the FSB, the security forces, and certain units that are actually set up to do things in urban terrain could be the units that they've called upon to do whatever, either putting down a coup or securing areas. One area around Moscow is where the elites tend to live. All right, it's where a lot of the supporters of those very close to Putin live, and there's reports of roadblocks going in and around that area. Now, whether that's to keep somebody out or to keep them in, that's not clear, but there's roadblocks being set up in that area, according to what's on social media. What we're not seeing is a lot of other media feeds yet. It's kind of catching up with what's going on out there.
Hal, I want to put up this tweet here from Fox News correspondent Trey Yingst. And he says, excuse me, remember, 97% of the Russian army is fighting in Ukraine right now. That's according to the UK Defense Secretary Ben Wallace. Unprecedented events tonight in Russia, says Trey. So, are you concerned, or is that a concern, I guess, with the Russian side that they might not have enough manpower to thwart something like this, if anything like that would happen or is happening now?
I don't know. Obviously, in a country like Russia with this massive nuclear arsenal, anything that happens there to destabilize the government is of a concern. The question is what's going on, and that's not entirely clear. You know, there's a couple of different scenarios. One is that Prigozhin is trying to throw a coup to take over Russia. That's some speculation out there. There's also the thought that Prigozhin may be trying this, but actually he may get thwarted, but there could be somebody else standing in the wings that is going to exploit this and try to take over Russia themselves. Don't know what's going on. I have to tell you, this reminds me of events back in 1991, and we all remember what happened with the Soviet Union back then, but there was an attempted coup at that time as well. What we didn't have at that time was the proliferation of social media. So now what you have is people on the streets filming things with their cell phones and then immediately posting that to Telegram or whatever social media they can get it out on. And a lot of what we're seeing is stuff that was posted to Telegram, which is a social media platform allowed in Russia, and then being forwarded on to Twitter. And it's giving us a view that we haven't seen before. It reminds me a little bit of what was called the Twitter revolution, if you will, in Iran some years back.
Yeah.
Same sort of thing we're seeing here, but this is live feed. This is breaking right now.
Hal, so I wanted to ask, though, have we heard it all from Putin, his deputies, his advisors? What's the official line right now from the Kremlin? Have they done anything to respond, to talk to their constituents, to everyday Russians about what is going on? Does Putin need to come out and say something about this, like ASAP?
He very well may. One of the things that happened was someone hacked Russian state media, and they played Prigozhin's statement on Russian state media. The one where he basically was castigating the Ministry of Defense, saying that they had lied to Putin, they had lied to the Russian people, that the entire military operation in Ukraine was built on lies. Very, very strong language, insurrectionist language, essentially. And that was being put out on official Russian state media. Now, obviously, they responded to that by shutting it down. I think that those media channels are dark now. But obviously, Putin is in a position where he needs to do something. Interestingly, today, before this happened, there was a little bit of a burble going on. Apparently, Russian state media had run stories of Putin being in two places at the exact same time. And there was rampant speculation that one of the two Putins wasn't actually Putin. It was one of his doubles, which kind of plays to a theme that we've heard before. But it was Russia state media that did this. And that's causing a lot of question and doubt as to which Putin was which Putin, and is he using doubles, and just how precarious is his situation. And then this happens where you're seeing this. One thing he can't do is he can't refute and it looks like there are all these military vehicles running all over Moscow. No matter what he puts out on official media, Russian state media, that will be certainly held in question by many Russians, and they're going to be looking out their windows and seeing these armored vehicles and trucks and troops all over Moscow and wondering what's going on. And certainly for those who are a little bit older, they're going to be looking at this thinking, I remember this from 1991. I know what happened back then. And they'll be probably providing input, if you will, to various families around the city saying, this could actually be a coup that's underway.
Okay, so Hal, according to the Associated Press, that's their wording, their phrasing. The mercenary group chief, Prigozhin, quote, takes it a step too far. Though Prigozhin declared today this is not a military coup, but a march for justice. The defense ministry there in Russia, though, denying carrying out the rocket attack. LiveNOW, look how they're at the White House. I want to know what White House officials are going to say about this. It looks like we just got a statement in from National Security Council spokesperson Adam Hodge. This is what he says. He says, we're monitoring the situation and we'll be consulting with allies and partners on these developments. So the U.S. is keenly aware. I've seen some reporting elsewhere out there from other outlets essentially saying U.S. officials, either on background or not, saying that this could be real or is real. So are we just going to sit back and watch this, or what's our role here, you think?
I think right now we're going to sit back and watch it, at least for the immediate time being. I don't know when you know, for example, John Kirby would be somebody I would expect to immediately pop out and say something if there was going to be an official statement. What we need to be so careful, not only ourselves, but all of our NATO allies, is we need to be careful about what we say, lest it be interpreted that the U.S. or NATO allies somehow had a hand in what's going on. And I got to tell you, in the streets of Moscow, in Russia right now, you can bet that there's all kinds of conspiracy theories that are filling the void of actual information. And even with that, it could very well be that Putin or those around Putin may actually start pushing stories that this is NATO or the U.S. and that there's something else going on. And that could escalate things and send it down a very dangerous path. If that's taken, if there's some sort of decisions made upon stuff like that. So that's why what you're going to see is a very cautious approach by the White House and by certainly 10 Downing Street and other capitals around the world, to be very careful not to react too quickly. And I think that's the right term to use, is we're monitoring the situation.
Okay.
And I kind of vaguely recall back in 91, there was similar language that we were monitoring the situation as well.
Okay, Hal, yeah. A lot of people on Twitter and social media are essentially, they're saying, Prigozhin, by doing this, he's toast. They're calling this, a suicidal mission that Prigozhin is undertaking right now. There's some reporting to suggest from Prigozhin himself saying that they have crossed some borders within Russia. We don't really have corroboration of that right now. So is that your view? Is this a suicide mission on Prigozhin's part? Last point here.
It very well may be. I don't know how this thing is going to end up. I think Trey Yanks points out a very key observation, that 97% of the Russian army is actually in Ukraine. And one of the things we saw with those anti-Putin Russian militias that are backed by Ukraine up in the Belgorod area, that oblast, was that they were able to move very quickly and very far into the oblast, covering quite a bit of terrain, not completely unopposed, but only lightly opposed. And within Russia, there has been some discussion that the Russian military has put so many forces into Ukraine that they don't have a lot outside of Ukraine for normal, domestic security purposes. It could very well be that there are some roads that if he had enough forces and they could move quickly enough, that he may have forces moving towards Moscow right now, which seems kind of strange. You look at the sheer size of the Russian army and the Russian military, but they are displaced, and maybe he's taking advantage of the situation.
All right. Hal, we'll just have to monitor it throughout the weekend. We do appreciate you hopping on to help us make sense of what is happening there in Russia and in Ukraine with this ongoing and developing situation. We'll definitely be speaking again. Thanks so much, Hal. Have a good weekend.
Okay, you too, Andrew.
Okay, that's a story obviously we're going to stay on top of as it is developing and breaking right now. Like Hal was saying, we don't want to speculate too much. That's not our role. It's not our job here. We want to get corroboration and facts on the ground, live, raw, and unfiltered, like we always do. So we're going to hold off on some of the other reporting that's out there. We're going to try to make sense of this, but that is as best as we can do right now about what we know in this specific ongoing situation there.